Hey, welcome to Guide to Decide channel. Hello, friends. Thanks for visiting my channel. Today, I'm going to discuss about the two options, which is car leasing versus owning. If you are trying to get a new car and you are in dilemma about whether to lease it or own it, I think you're hitting on the right video. In this rest of the video, we're going to discuss about these two options in detail and understand what option really makes more sense given your situation, right? And typically, what happens is people, when they are trying to get a new car, they go either with leasing or owning option, driven mostly by their decision making patterns, which is like either they're more comfortable with owning stuff rather than leasing, or somebody is leasing stuff who probably have more inclination towards not going into a lot of liability of or long-term commitment. So this is where the personality drives the decisions. But in this video, let's just keep that pattern decision making aside and let's apply some numbers or look at the example and see what really makes sense, right? How these numbers really apply into each of these options, and from the numbers perspective, what really makes sense, and from your situation perspective, what really makes sense, right? We're going to discuss all of that. And one disclaimer is that in this video, I'm only going to give you the information about what is leasing and what is owning and the example. It's the intention is really to educate you how to arrive to a good decision or a right decision, but not to make a decision on behalf of you, right? So without further delay, let's get into the video with these two options discussing in detail. Now, before we compare these two options, let's just understand what is these options are individually, right? So the first option is leasing. What is leasing, right? The name or the label is self-explanatory, and it's explaining that you're not owning a car, you're leasing it, you're renting it, right? So when you're renting a car, there is a specific period of time that you rent a car or you're leasing a car, and typically there is a lease contract, and that contract is valid for certain period of time. And typically what I've seen is at least the contract validity is for 3 years. And there is in this contract, the one of the main or the key attribute that you will see is the mileage limit, right? So when you take a car as part of the lease, you are not supposed to cross that mileage in that contract duration. What does it mean is if the mileage limit is 10k per annum and you leasing it for 3 years, that means 30k miles is the overall limit. It doesn't matter whether you have driven 12k miles in first year or 15k miles, but ultimately at the end of 3 years or at the end of your contract, the 30k miles is the limit, and any mile that you go beyond that, you will be charged per mile basis. Some dealers charge 20 cents per mile or 10 cents per mile. I think that really varies. We don't know until you really talk to the dealer. So and I don't think the contract really says what is the cost they're going to apply per mile that you exceed. So what I really suggest is, if you know that your lifestyle or your needs, your domestic or professional requirements really go beyond this 10 or 15k miles per annum, then that's a clear indication that you doesn't really belong to this option. you have to go with ownership or some other option, but leasing is not a right option for you. So, but if you have a lifestyle where you know for sure that you are really under this 10 or 15k mileage limit, and you also have some buffer every year, that is really a good qualifier for you to be into this type of lease, right? And you be the judge for that. You should really have some kind of an understanding about what is your life going to look like in the next 3 years. And the next attribute is the down payment, right? So just like when you go for buying a car or a home, there is a down payment, and you have to make some amount as a down payment there, and you cannot. Sometimes they accept credit cards. Some dealers accept only debit cards or cash or check. So that's okay, right? So it's basically a down payment there, and then at the end of the lease term, you have an option to really return the car, or you can buy the car that you have leased so far. So I think this is really a no making sense options for buying a car that you have leased, because you paid so much already for those 3 years or 5 years, whatever the lease term is. I don't think it makes sense. If you are renting, that means you don't want to own the car. You don't want to stay with the car. So I think you should really get into the lease option when you really have no plans to own this car, right? But maybe there are some exceptional situations where individuals might go for owning the car. But I personally feel that the typical behavior of customers when they go into the lease is they go for a lease and they exit the lease by leaving the car to the dealer, right? So that's the leasing, car leasing model. And then when you go for owning a car, again, this is like you become the owner of it. So buying a car with either paying full amount or you taking a loan, right? Mostly what I've seen is people take auto loan because that's what makes sense, because it's not a value appreciating property or an asset, right? So it's more of a liability. So you really don't want to put all your cash to buy a car whose value is going to depreciate. So typical recommendation from any financial advisor would be take auto loan for cars, right? So let's assume that you're taking auto loan, right? And typical auto loan term is for 5 years is what I've seen. And there is no mileage limit here, because you owning the car, you drive whatever the mileage that you want to put it on the car, right? And that's why I was saying earlier that if the lease is not a good option, because of the mileage limit, owning is really a good option there, because you don't have that mileage limit on it, right? And then there's also just like in the leasing car option, owning a car also expects a down payment, right? And some dealers will allow you, depending on from where you are borrowing the money from, what bank or which lender it is. Sometimes they really go with very low down payment, and you can still take full amount car loan. But what happens in those instances is you really pay a lot of interest on because you paying loan, or the monthly payment will be really high because there is no down payment. So typical recommendation is to go for a down payment, and then at the end of the loan term, you own the car, and you can continue to own the car after 5 years, or you can sell it. It's up to you, right? So that's about the owning the car. Now let's apply some numbers and see how these options really play, right? Let's assume that there is a car that cost 40,000, right? $40,000, and in the lease, and you want to go with a leasing option. The down payment that you go with is $3,000, and the term that you want to go with the lease is 3 years. Like I was saying, this is a typical lease term that you would see. And then the interest rate with 5% annually, and the mileage is 12,000 miles per year. You are typically paying a lease payment of approximately $500 per month. Again, this is just an example amount, the typical amount that I have seen. But again, these numbers really vary depending on the deal you get or the market, what it is at the time that you getting into the lease. So again, these are just sample numbers here, but mostly reflecting to the real world, right? So now going into the ownership model, again the same 40,000 car that you want to go with an ownership model, then you go with a down payment of 6,000, because typically when you owning it and you're taking the loan, you don't want to pay interest for a for the full cost of the car. So you want to really bring down the cost by giving some more down payment. So that's a typical customer behaviors. So down payment is 6,000, and you really go with the same annual interest as 5%, and there is a loan term is 5 years. Now you have a loan amount after the down payment, which is 34,000, and the monthly loan payment that you would be paying for this 34,000, 5% annually for 5 years, every month you're going to pay $650 per month. From a face value, what you really see is, oh, for lease you're paying $500 per month. Oh no, for owning I'm paying $650. It's obviously $150 more, so probably it sounds like, okay, leasing is a cheaper option. Let's hold on the horses there. Let's go through the rest of the comparison and see what really is the cheapest option, right? And again, what I'm going to do now is, as a next step, is I'm going to compare the cost of ownership. When you own a car, whether it is a lease or you are taking the buying the car, the period that you are using it, how much you are paying for that usage is what we're going to calculate in this comparison now, right? So when you are looking at a lease option, leasing a car of $40,000, down payment $3,000, and term is 3 years, and interest rate is 5% annually, mileage limit is 12,000, monthly lease payment is approximately $500. What is the total cost that you are incurring for 3 years? And again, I'm excluding all the gas prices, the service, or any other expenditures that comes outside of this, the pure, the cost of the car, because those things really vary depending on where you live, how much you drive, and the service recommendations, etc., right? So let's just look at this purely with that lens, where what is the cost and how much you really pay for the car, not for the maintenance, not for the usage, right? Now when you're using this car and owning that car for 3 years under the lease, you are paying $3,000, which is a down payment, plus the $500 multiplying to 36 months, because you have 3 years, 12 months per year, 36 months. The overall cost for 3 years is $21,000. That's what you're going to pay for each for that lease term. Now if you really divide that into 3 per year, what is that you paid is $7,000 per annum, right, or per year. So now when you look at the right side of the section here, the ownership cost, right, when you're buying a car of cost 40,000, down payment $6,000, the loan term is 5 years, interest rate 5% annually, and the loan amount is $34,000. Monthly loan payment is approximately $650 per month. Now let's assume that after 5 years, when you paid off your car, let's assume that you're selling this car. What will be the resale value of that car, which costed 40,000 at the beginning when you are buying that 5 years ago, right? So let's assume that it's the value depreciates and go for about $20,000, right? So 40,000 minus 20,000, right? So you basically, if you're selling this car, you get 20,000 back, right? So let's see the total cost, right? You have paid $6,000 down payment, and then 650 multiplied by 60, which is 5 years, how much you paid, right? And when you combine all of this minus 20,000, because you got the 20,000 back when you sold it, somebody paid you, whoever bought your car. So overall you have paid $25,000 for this car for 5 years, net, right? So let's divide and see per year how much it cost, right? So total cost for 1 year is 25,000 by 5. You paid 5,000. Now let's compare the numbers. If you look at it, $7,000 is what you paid for 3 years leasing that car. 7,000 per year for 3 years, and ownership costed you $5,000 per year. So obviously you paid $2,000 more each year because you are leasing the car. Now this number really make you feel that, wow, ownership really cost you low, right? Which is true, and the numbers are speaking, right? So yes, but let's make sure that we're not missing the details, because often what happens with the numbers is, depending on where you're looking and how you're looking, you can really get it totally wrong, right? So let's just detail it down and highlight some of the facts here. The first thing is, on the ownership side, you have made a down payment of $6,000. When you compare with lease, you are paying the down payment as $3,000. So typically on the ownership side, what happens is you pay more down payment, higher down payments, right? So when compared to the lease, so that's, you need to have more capital at the time of buying. You need to have things in a cash to really, when I say cash, or you need to have a bank balance of $6,000 to really, so you really want to put that into car is one thing that makes a differentiation of whether to go with the lease or ownership, right? That's one factor. The second factor is, you have to really drive this car for 5 years. You owning this car because you have this loan period and you are owning this car for 5 years. Typically what I have seen is the warranties that you have on the car, or most of the car components or the parts, the automobile parts, they come to the wear and tear depending on how you're using it. You have to really, because there is no mileage limit and all, you're probably going beyond 10,000 or something. So after 3 years, or when you are closer to the 3 years time, when you go for a service, you might get more service recommendations, which might cost you more. So you have to also factor in those type of expenses, which might add up and might give you a higher cost for owning it, right? So you have to make sure that what is your usage style looks like, right? Because you own it 5 years. And when you use 5 years, again, what happens is, after 5 years, when you are trying to sell this car, depending on now in our calculation, we said that there is a 50% depreciation that happened on this car after 5 years. The original cost is 40,000, now it is 20,000. With the innovation in the automobile industry, right, and with the kind of market fluctuating in a very dynamic way, there is no guarantee that you're going to get a very good resale value, right? Sometimes you might have a small scratch or whatever the maintenance, the way that you have maintained your car, your value of the car might even further shrink down and may not get a good deal. So you have to really keep that factor also in your mind. If you are a really good maintaining person and you can really think that the brand and the make that you are buying is worth, and you can actually get a higher return value, then you should consider that, right? Now, with all of these factors, sometimes this 5,000 number from the calculation perspective might seems that okay, you're paying less when compared to the lease, but with the factors that I have explained earlier, it might cost you more than the lease, or maybe very close to what you are paying when you are under the lease. So I hope that illusion that it creates with $2,000 differentiating between these two options might the clarification that I've gave would help you to start thinking in that aspect also. Now, when you look at the lease, it's not rosy as well, right? So lease option is good, depending on, again, what I said earlier is the mileage limit. If your lifestyle, right, has more demands to be on the wheels, you have to, it's not predictable next 3 years, then highly recommended not to go for lease. But if at all you got into the lease and then things, life events happens right? So yeah, things change, and if you are exceeding any of these miles, at least you have some lease term there, which will help you to 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 restore that, or balance it again in the rest of the period that you have in the lease. Or like I said, at the end of the lease, you still have an option to buy the car. You just have to again compare your options. Is it returning the car with all the penalties and the extra fines and all that? Are you paying more, or is it make sense to just buy the car and use it for next 2 years, or maybe use it for another few months and sell it in the open market for a better price? Options are very wide range there, but you should start thinking about it as well, right? And also think about it as the innovation. Like I'm stressing this word because there is a lot of innovation that is happening in the automobile industry right now. You probably appear outdated if you are owning a car for 5 years, and maybe the technology is so advanced by the time that you end the 5th year, the technology that you have in your car probably is outdated. So maybe if you are a tech savvy and you really want to want to be really using the most updated innovation or technology in your car, then leasing is also a good option, right? When compared to, because every 3 years typically is what you will see the cycle of new innovation getting in most of the car companies' vehicles. So with that, I'll just conclude my video by saying that, hey, when you are trying to get a car, don't just go by your typical pattern of decision making, but just apply your numbers, whatever the numbers are, your numbers are, just apply them and see how much really it costs you for lease versus ownership. And again, at the end, don't just go or get an illusion by the numbers. Start thinking about what is under the hood, right? Like I was saying, the cost and the lifestyle, how many drivers are going to use it. If there is a teenager, there might be some, you know, extra expenses that might cost depending on how they are driving and all that. So all of that, please keep in mind before you making the decision. So with that, I'll sign off, and thank you for watching. If you like this video and you think that this is informative, please like and subscribe my channel. I'm going to post most of the videos that help you guys make decision making easy. And thanks. Signing off. Guide to decide. Thank you. Bye.